Hey, how's everybody doing? This is L once again. We're back at it with another one. What we're going to take off with is from last time I talked to you guys about what the kingdom is. Last time we left off dealing with a little bit about what a kingdom is and about God's plan, ultimate plan for us. About how the Bible is not about a religion, nor it's about starting an organization. We talked about some of God's favorite words like rejoice, renew, redeem, recompense, stuff like that. But today I wanted to go over, I want to start talking about kingdom components now. When you live in a country, there's always different components that you got to learn, like law, the Constitution, what it does it mean to be a citizen. You're talking about government, you're talking about commonwealth. Well, the same thing applies to the kingdom. And once again, the Bible is not a religious book, nor is it about how to start or be in a religion. So, but the book talks about kings and kingdoms. And my goal today is I want to start going over some of the major kingdom components in a kingdom, or a lot of the major components that the Bible talks about. And we got maybe four, maybe about seven of them. I'm going to try to keep it 10 minutes, but if I'm flowing with the Spirit, then it may go over. So I just ask that you bear with me. But I want to start talking about kingdom components today. So that way, when we start going through the Bible and we learn together, you can tie definitions to proper scenarios and keep everything in proper context, because the book is a book about kings. It doesn't talk about a democracy. It doesn't talk about a republic. It only talks about kings and kingdoms. So it's important that we understand the concepts of king and kingdoms. And one of the best ways to understand that is by understanding the components of kingdoms, definitions pertaining to what is a king, what does it mean to be a lord, what does it mean to live in a kingdom, what is a kingdom, what does it mean citizenship. So those are some things I want to do, and I'll be going over my notes. But let's do a quick prayer so that we can start. Heavenly Father, I'd like to thank you for today. Father, I ask that, Lord, you use me to minister to your people the message of the kingdom, a forgotten message that's been is now being revealed at this time. Lord, let this be a right now word for your people. But Lord, let this be a word that, Lord, anybody can hear it at any time of their life and is still, Lord, full of the Spirit, still full of power. I ask, Lord, that you use me to minister to your people. I give you access, Lord, into my day over this streaming session that I'm doing. That, Lord, you will minister to your people in a way that they will be able to get it. And Lord, maybe I'll say things a couple different ways for, different people coming on so that they'll understand the message of the kingdom. That is the message that you want preached out here. So, Lord, I just thank you for that time now, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to understand why Christ came. All right, Christ didn't come so he could start a religion, to start an institution or an organization, or to rule over a powerful nation. Okay, that's not Christ's goal. All right, he didn't come to do none of those things. He simply came to reveal a message. He came to show you that there's another country present at the moment. He came to talk to you about the kingdom and how to be in right standing with kingdom. All right, so like I told you earlier about kingdom components, I want to start talking about kingdom components. So that way, when we go through the Bible, we'll understand these different kingdom components. Now, the first thing I told you from last week was we started talking about what the Bible's about. So the first thing we want to understand, so that people don't get it confused on what we represent when it comes to the Bible, the world already thinks we in a religion. This is not good, because that way they can put you off in the box and then say, this is what they do, this is who they are. And it's not right. And so, for some apparent reason, we've had the wrong framework of religion when we associate to learning things from the Bible, and that's not the right way to look at the Bible. It's a book about kingdoms and kings. There's nothing in there that talks about democracy and republic. It may mention people doing religious things in there, but it doesn't mean that you all of a sudden just make that what the whole book is about. There's a bigger picture in the book that needs to be understood. What is the Lord trying to say to us? Is he interested in starting religions, organizations, groups, or is he interested in getting you back in the right position to where you can have dominion? Now, if you're going to have dominion, that's completely different. That's associated with being a king, somebody dealing with being king or having authority over a particular territory, if you're talking about dominion. But if you're talking about religion, now you're only talking about having a membership. Okay? So we're going to go through the Bible and we're going to start talking about it. So the first thing I want to make sure I go back to is, once again, the message of the Bible is about a king, it's about a kingdom, and it's about a royal family. Okay, we are the royal family. The Lord is the king and he has a kingdom. The kingdom is a country, once again, a country called heaven. All right. So let's start going through some of the major components when we start talking about a king, about a kingdom. The first component that we want to make sure we understand, that's going to be riddled throughout the whole Bible, it's one called the king. What is a king? Let me look at some of my definitions for you so I can keep it concise and precise. The king is the central component of a kingdom and embodies the essence of the kingdom. The king is the ultimate source of authority in the kingdom, and through his authority establishes the kingdom. The sovereignty of the king is inherent in his royal authority. All right. So once again, the king is the central component of a kingdom and embodies the essence of the kingdom. The king is the ultimate source of authority in the kingdom, and through this authority establishes the kingdom. All right. The sovereignty of the king is inherent in his royal authority. All right. So so that's the definition of an actual king. This is the supreme person in the system. All right. No one is above him. He votes the people in. You can't vote him out. His power, like we've read, is inherent. You understand me? He gets there by birthright as well. So these are some things, these are qualities of a king. This is the central person in a kingdom, in the country. He has absolute sovereignty, absolute rule. But let's go over some unique abilities about a king. Number one, and I'll just name a few, but there's so many I have, but I'm gonna just name a top of the top qualities so that when we go through the Bible, when you start seeing kings, you'll start saying, okay, well, this king, obviously this is what a king is. This is some of their unique qualities because we're going over it now. A king is never voted into power. You can't vote a king into power. This is not, remember, kings and kingdoms are completely different from a democracy and republic. See, in a democracy, in a republic, you can vote people in and vote people out. I mean, we do that here in the United States. We can only stomach a person for only 4 years at a time. That's why people have to vie for your vote. They have to promise you different things to get into office. Why? Because they understand I have to be voted in. But a king is there by birthright, or he inherits it, or there by creation. Okay. So a king is never voted into power. That works only in a democracy and republic. But remember, since we're reading the Bible from kingdom framework, we got to understand concepts and components about kingdoms. We know a lot about democracy and republics, but we don't know about kings and kingdoms. And this is the framework of the Bible. You hear me keep saying it a lot. So I want you to understand that there should be a shift that should start to happen in your mind between what is a kingdom and what is a democracy. All right. A king's authority is by birthright. We just talked about that earlier. See, a king is born. He's born a king. In old kingdoms of old days, back when you had the kingdom of Rome and Persian Empire, they had, when those kings, when they would, sit down off the throne, they would get their firstborn son to take over and rule next. The son would inherit it by birthright, not because somebody voted him in, not because a group of, sages got together and decided, well, because your dad's going to sit down, you're going to be king. No, only a king can bestow upon another person to be a king. Okay. So a king's authority is by birthright. Who's Christ? Christ is king how? By birthright. The Father is king how? Inherent. By creation rights. Okay. Also, we talked about this already. A king cannot be voted out of power. There we go once again. You can't vote a king into power and you can't vote him out. He votes for you. If he controls the whole system, if he controls the whole country, and his power is inherent, then how can you vote him in? You cannot vote something in that's inherent. For instance, we inherently breathe naturally. You can't try to stop the breathing. It's going to happen regardless if you like it or not. You can't get a bunch of Republicans voting on what time of the day you should breathe and how long you should do it. Your body's going to naturally do it. Why? Because they understand that is inherent. That is natural for you to breathe in and out. You can't vote on that. Well, the same thing applies to the Lord. His power is inherent. It's natural. You cannot vote him into power. You cannot vote him out of power. He naturally has that power. He got it by birthright, by creation rights. Okay. A king's word is law in his authority. The word authority means to have authorization or to be authorized. So a king's word is law, which means simply anything a king says out of his mouth becomes a law. It's a decree. It's an edict. That's why when kings speak, or that's why I should say why kings are not so quick to speak, because when they say something, it becomes a decree across the land. For instance, in the Bible, King Herod, he didn't want to kill John the Baptist, but he had to because he made an edict. He made a decree. He made a law that says, I'll give you anything you want, half my kingdom. And unfortunately, the little girl, she didn't want that. She did what her mother told her to do, John the Baptist's head on a platter. And it said the king was sad at this, but he had to do it. Why? Because he's a king. You got to hold your word when you're a king. See, a king and his word is law. All right. So what else we had? We had King Herod once again with at the time when Jesus was born. Around that time, he killed all the little children who were 2 years and under, the boys. But he wasn't challenged when he did it. No one said, "Listen, man, we're going to take you off the throne. You beside yourself, King Herod. You know, you're around here killing little kids." No, they understood this is a king. His word is absolute. You cannot change it. You cannot vote him out of power. Anytime you try to vote a king out of power or try to usurp a king's throne, that's called rebellion. Okay? So those are a couple different things I want you to understand about a king. Here's another one. A king personally owns everything in his domain. The territory in which a king rules over, he controls everything. It's personally his property. Even you, the person, are his personal property. So if you're in the Lord's kingdom, you are his personal property. All right? He controls everything. The trees are his. The insects are his. The ground is his. The clothes you have on is his. Everything belongs to the king. See, this is a complete different concept than democracy and republic. See, in republic and the democracy is, this is mine. I'm protecting this. I have a right to this. But in a kingdom, nothing belongs to you. It belongs to the Lord. You have access to everything, but you don't control. And that's been the biggest difference with democracy and republics. We like to control. But in a kingdom, you have access to everything. All right. So those are a couple different ones that I want to go over about what a king is. There's many more, but I don't want to take the time to kind of take too much time trying to go through everything about a king, because as we go through the Bible, we start understanding more. I'll start breaking down a little bit more about concepts of a king. But let's go to the next one. So the first one was understanding what a king is. The next one is we want to understand what the word Lord means. So the kingdom lordship principle. All right. All true kings must have property or domain over which they exercise rulership of dominion. Okay. Therefore, all true kings are personally legal owners of property, territory of their domain. Another word for owner is Lord. Okay, so the second word, so we learn king, the next one is Lord. The word Lord means owner. So kings are automatically lords because they own everything. See, in order to be a king, you must have territory in which you rule over. You must have a domain in which you have dominion over. If you have a domain in which you rule over, you are automatically a lord. Lord means owner. That's where we get the term from landlord. Why? This is the owner of this land or this property. You cannot have that title unless you are an owner of something. Even we've used these titles where a man says, "I'm the king of this castle, woman." Where do you get that from? That's old concepts from kings and kingdoms. But you have to have territory in which you rule over. You have to have something in which you have dominion over for you to even claim that title. So a king is automatically a lord. Okay? What else I have in here for you? All right. So that's what it means to be a lord. So when we go through the Bible and you start seeing the word Lord, Lord here, now you understand this. Lord means owner. Okay? But it's also synonymous with king. Now here's the next one. Domain. Okay? So we did king, we did Lord, now we're doing domain. All right. Domain, the domain of a king is the territory over which he exercises authority, control, and dominion. Okay. The king owns his own domain and can expand or extend it by power of his might. The wealth of the domain determines the king's glory. When the king impacts the domain with his influence, it is called his kingdom. Okay, so the word kingdom is two words put together: king and dom, D-O-M, which is for domain. We already went over what a king is. Now, the D-O-M in the word kingdom stands for domain. In other words, the person that has dominion over this territory, over this turf, over this landmass, over this domain is called a king. So a king has his name in the territory that he runs. That's why you get the word kingdom. We tend to do that sometimes. When you create a new business, you tend to put your name in the business sometimes. Well, that's what a king is. A kingdom is a territory over which a king rules. In our everyday vernacular, that would be called a country. See, we don't have kingdoms now. All we have is countries, nations. But back then you had actual kingdoms with an actual person over it called a king. I think in some of these other areas, maybe Saudi Arabia and places like that, they still may have princes and kings in certain areas maybe. But the concept is not that, it's not really here like it used to be back in the day. Okay. So domain was the next one that I told you about. And the domain of a king is the territory. Remember, domains or territories over which he exercises authority, control, and dominion. Who does this? A king. So you can't be a king without territory. And I told you kings are automatically lords, which means owner. So a domain is territory over which a king exercises authority, control, and dominion. All right. So that's domain is the next one. All right. So let's go ahead and also one more thing about a king. The king can delegate authority to others to share in the government and administration of his domain. So a king can spread out his domain and give it to other people to govern over it. Kings have absolute power, man. All right. So the next one we want to understand, we want to go over constitution. Now, remember, I told you, since the kingdom is a country and all countries have a constitution, the constitution is the framework or the foundation in which you build the country on. That's where all your laws are built from in the country. So if you stay in the United States or any country, they're going to have a constitution in which the laws and how people operate are to be derived in the country. So when you look at the Constitution of the United States, that's where our laws come from that Constitution. You had your pioneers of the country, your founding fathers. They created a Constitution. And then from that is where you build your laws from. So all countries have laws. All countries have constitutions. And from the constitutions where you build your laws and all the other different things that have a thriving society. Okay. Now let's go over what's the definition of a constitution, so you can just have a solid definition. A constitution of a kingdom is the documented will, intent, desires, and purposes of the king for his citizens and kingdom. All right, let's say that one more time. The constitution of the kingdom is a documented will, intent, desires, and purposes of the king for his citizens and kingdom. See, once again, all this is related to a king. So that's why when you read the Bible, what do? It's the constitution of a country called heaven. But what is the Constitution telling you? It's telling you it's the documented will of Father, his intent, his desires, and the purposes for why Father and what does Father have for his citizens and his kingdom. That's what the whole book is about. That's why when we start talking about the words rejoice, renew, redeem, this is the Father's intent. His intent is for you to have dominion, not to have a religion. Kings don't give for inheritance religions. But when we don't understand the Bible, you start making up a religion. Okay? So once again, a constitution of the kingdom is the documented will, intent, and desire and purposes of the king for his citizens and kingdom. You look throughout history at old kingdoms of old time, these definitions apply to all of them. And the same applies to the Bible. You see how the Lord tries to keep everything easy for us? But see, we got to understand the definitions. Then the Bible starts making a lot more sense. All right, so Constitution was the one we just did. Let's go down a little bit more. And I have a bunch of scriptures to back all of this stuff up too, but Once again, I want to keep it a little bit shorter today. I'm already over my 10-minute mark, but we still going to have to keep it going. I have a few more that I want to discuss, and then after that, I'll stop, and then I'll finish the rest on my next video. All right, here's the next one, law. So the kingdom principle of law. So law is another key component in kingdoms. Remember, I told you a king and his word is law. All right. The law of the kingdom is the proclaimed word, decrees, edicts of the king. And these laws determine the standards and precepts by which the kingdom is to be governed. So didn't we talk about that earlier? A king's word is law. When he gives an edict across the land, it is absolute. Let's read that one more time. The law of the kingdom is the proclaimed word, decrees, and edicts of the king. And these laws determine the standards and precepts by which the kingdom is to be governed. See, the Lord has a way that the kingdom is to be governed. It is law across the land. He gives his decrees and he determines the standards and precepts. All kingdoms do that. Some different kingdoms have different precepts and standards by which you live by. See, a king is considered the standard. That's why they call the king the ruler, because a ruler sets a standard. And that's what kings do. Kings set standards. So it's only proper that a king is the one who determines the standards and precepts by which the government or his kingdom is to be governed, because he's the standard. He's the standard by which he measures everything. Now, our Father, Abba, he determines the standards by which everything is governed. He determines the standards and the precepts. All right. So that's the law. And we'll be, as we go through the Bible, once again, we'll start going through law and what that means and start understanding it a lot better than what we, it just starts making more sense as you go through the Bible, because now you'll be able to apply it to scenarios and proper context in the Bible. All right. The next one we want to understand is kingdom keys. So keys is the next one. We just did law. Now we're doing keys. The keys of the kingdom are the principles, precepts, laws, and systems by which the kingdom functions. The keys must be learned and applied by the citizens in order to appropriate the benefits and privileges of the kingdom. All right, let's say that. Let's read that one more time and read it a little bit slower. The keys of the kingdom are the principles, precepts, laws, and systems by which the kingdom functions. Okay. The keys must be learned, applied by the citizens in order to appropriate the benefits and privileges of the kingdom. For instance, when you're going to go live in another country, you want to learn the keys. What are the keys? We just said the keys are laws, precepts. You want to learn the laws of the country that you're going to so that you can maximize the benefits of that country. How ashamed would it be if somebody kind of robbed you in whatever country you're in, but you didn't know that there was a key for law enforcement to come and, fight on your behalf? What if you didn't know 911? Knowing 911 is a key. That's a law. There's laws, there's rights that you have as a citizen. Those rights are those laws are your keys. You need to learn the laws in the country that you're in, because those are the keys that you should understand so that you can be an effective citizen and you can get maximum benefit. The same thing when you work at a company. They have laws at that company. When you become an employee, you have benefits. You have access to certain things. All right, you have access to the break room, to the bathrooms, to the workout room. You have benefits. And that's what kingdom keys are. For instance, let's give another example. Let's say somebody, let you stay at their house. They had a very nice house. Everything was immaculate. And they gave you the keys. You had a bunch of keys. Okay? Like a janitor, you had a bunch of keys. But they only told you the key to the front door. So you can get in the house, but all the rooms are locked up in the house. And there's a key for each room. And you got a bunch of keys like a janitor. Those other keys won't be effective to you because you don't really know what room they go to. So you can spend time trying different keys out until you get one right. That's kind of what we've been doing with the Bible. The Bible, when you understand the keys, you understand how to have access to something. Keys are synonymous with access. Keys allow access into something. Keys are for authority. Okay, you go in and outdoors, different dimensions in different rooms. So that house analogy I gave you, you got a key in your hand and it's only good for the front door, but all the rest of the rooms are locked up in the house. Well, how are you going to be able to benefit from the house? You can't get into any room, and different rooms have different things for your pleasure. Well, that's what the Bible is. We need to understand the keys of the Bible, the keys of the kingdom in God's country, the laws, so that we can understand effectively on how to be an effective citizen. And the laws are important so that you can enforce what belongs to you. See, laws are not to try to kill you. They're good for helping you to enforce what belongs to you. There's nothing, no country is going to live or going to survive without laws in it. All right. So kingdom keys are important because keys are tied to having authority, having access. All right. So let's go to the next one. So we just did keys. All right. The next one is citizenship. All right. So we did keys. Now it's citizenship. So kingdom citizenship. Citizenship in a kingdom is not a right, but a privilege. All right. And it is at the pleasure of the king himself. Citizens are chosen by the king and are beneficiaries of the king's pleasure and promises. All right, let's read that one more time. Citizenship in a kingdom is not a right, but a privilege, and it is at the pleasure of the king himself. Citizens are chosen by the king and are beneficiaries of the king's pleasures and promises. The best benefit you can have in any country is to be a citizen, because now you have access to everything in that country. You can call 911. You can go and exercise your rights in the courtroom. You are beneficiaries of that country. Now that country is obligated to take care of you. You have access to all of its army. That's why you've seen many times on TVs where maybe, somebody from a different country goes into another country and they hold the people hostage. That's an international incident, man. You have one of our citizens. We want him back. So you know what they do? They fight on your behalf. Why? You're a citizen. They're obligated to take care of you. Citizenship is one of the most difficult things to get a lot of times. If you want to come to the Americas, they do a process called naturalization, where you get to become a citizen. Everybody doesn't get to become one. You got a lot of people crossing the border illegally. They don't want to go through the process of becoming a citizen, but they want the benefits of living in the country. All right. So kingdom citizenship is extremely important. See, the Bible deals, because it's a kingdom, deals with rights, being a citizen. The Bible deals with citizenship. Religion deals with membership. When you deal with citizenship, you're dealing with laws, rights, government. When you deal with religion, you're dealing with membership. Membership, you don't have no rights. When you got traditions, a lot of gymnastics at church, antics, gimmicks. You got a religion, you got steps. Do these 5 steps to see Jesus. You see what I'm saying? So this is 2 different concepts. One is dealing with rights. When you have a right for something, you can demand it. But when you're dealing with membership, you can't demand nothing. You can get a lot of good sermons, but you don't get to demand anything. That's why the Lord says, come boldly before me to the throne of grace. Why? You have an inheritance. Why? Bring my law to me. See, in the courtrooms of heaven, you bring law to the Lord, not your personal feelings. Why? The Lord wants you to bring law to him. He don't want you to bring your emotions to him. You can't bring your membership to the Lord. Well, Lord, I'm one of the deacons at Ebenezer Baptist Church. Oh, that's nice. So I think I should get some benefits. No, it don't work that way. You bring law to me. That's why the Bible is a constitution. It's a book about laws. You bring laws to the Lord, not your memberships. All right. Let me see if I can squeeze one more in here. I just did citizenship. Okay. All right, so citizenship. All right. The last one I'm going to do is going to be code of ethics. All right, so kingdom code of ethics. Ethics is the last one. Ethics is the standard of conduct established by the king for the behavior and social relationships for its citizens. This is also the expectation of the king regarding the values and moral standards the citizens must adhere to. The code of ethics becomes the foundation of the kingdom culture and manifests itself in the lifestyle of the citizens. Every country have ethics. Every country has a behavior, a social relationship that you must adhere to in the country. All right. Every country has values, moral standards that the citizens must adhere to. When you go to different countries, that's why it's important when you're traveling. You want to make sure you understand the values, the standards over in that country, because you could offend people in that country and cause a lot of problems for yourself. Same thing here in the United States. We have standards. We got values. There's a code of conduct, a code of ethics that you must adhere to as a citizen. Okay, so one more time for that definition of code of ethics. This is the standard of conduct established by the king for the behavior and social relationships of his citizens. This is also the expectation of the king regarding the values and moral standards of his citizens that they must adhere to. That's how the Lord works. He expects his citizens in his country to behave a certain way. All right. There's certain values and moral standards that must be adhered to by citizens of the kingdom. The code of ethics becomes the foundation of the culture, the kingdom culture, and manifests itself in the lifestyles of citizens. See, code of ethics establishes a culture. So you can go to different countries and they got a code of ethics which becomes their culture. See, the people take the culture with them. Why? Because culture is in people. That's why you can go to different places in the United States and you got different places. They have their own Asian area. They got a Chinese area. They got a Hispanic area. They got areas where, for your Philippines, for your Dominicans, and they all have their own little areas, Jamaican areas. And you see the areas tends to look like the place they come from. Why? Because culture is in people. They bring their culture with them. They bring their code of ethics, code of conducts. Those are the foundations for a culture. See, in the kingdom, when God has us here, we're supposed to have code of ethics. There's a standard in which we're supposed to look like. So when somebody see you, they should be able to say, "That's a kingdom person right there." How do you know? Because the way he handles himself. Look at his ethics. Look at his moral standards. Look at the values. That's how they're supposed to be able to recognize us. They can say, just like how if you were to go to New York or a different place, what the first thing you do? Okay, that's Chinaville right there, or that's where the Jamaicans hang out at. This is Dominican. The whole area starts looking like it. Matter of fact, sometimes it gets to the point to where if you go to places, different areas in the United States where the Asians probably have taken over, they got their own streets named after them, all the stores. See, they brought their culture with them. So culture is in people, not necessarily in the place. So when we came to earth, we were supposed to bring the culture of heaven here. That's what the Lord wants done. He wants us to bring his culture into these different systems. He doesn't want you to bring a religion into the different systems. Why? Religion doesn't do anything. You don't have a culture of religion. That's the point that I want to make to you. So when they see us, they're supposed to say, okay, these people are kingdom people because of their culture. Look at how they handle themselves. Look at how they dress. Look at how they speak. Look at how they behave. And look at the power that they operate in. I think that's enough for today. I stopped off on code of ethics. Next time we'll be coming right into the kingdom commonwealth. So commonwealth will be our next one. I think this is a good place to stop. I went over, it's about 32 minutes now. I really appreciate you all's time. But, when you start talking about the things of the Lord, you can get really deep into it. And, I try hard not to cut the Holy Spirit off on some things he wants him to go. But when the word's in you, you can just keep going. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit lengthy than what I wanted. I apologize for that. But once again, this information is good. And we're going to take back off where we left on the next session, where we're going to be going into starting off with Commonwealth. And I think I have a few more, and that'll wrap up kingdom components. And then we can start diving into the Bible and some good topics I want to talk to you all about. That's going to really blow your mind. Once again, this is L. Thank you.